Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And this map, you guys may have seen it before on my channel, is the 2030s electoral map. It shows the shifts of certain states' electoral votes from the current map to what the map is going to be like in 2032, 2036, and 2040. And also on top of that, the House map starting in 2030 is going to be indicative of this. For example, the amount of seats that certain states are going to be gaining, points for the electoral college, if you will, those are basically just House seats because every state gets 2 senators. So you're seeing a lot of these states, many of whom are already very much so, gerrymandered in favor of the Democrats. We do have this thing in redistricting where it's polarized, and you look at what's going on in California, you look at what's going on in New York and Illinois, like these are very, very blue maps. You can't even draw out a red seat in some of these states to the point where it's almost certainly going to be Democrats who are going to lose House seats to Republicans in Texas, in Florida, Arizona, Utah, and Idaho. And we've talked a lot about the Democrats' problems that they have coming up. They already have had one in the Senate. They may not retake it for decades. Obviously, they have a very, very, very narrow path to retake it by 2028, and that might be it. Given trends in Arizona and Nevada, if they manage to buck the trends in those states in 2028, which I have my doubts given the way that those states are going, they would have to win both of those seats. They'd have to flip North Carolina. They would have to flip Wisconsin in 2028. And then this year, they would have to hold on to Georgia, which is going to be very difficult for them to do so if Kemp goes for it. On top of it, with their, weaker candidate than Roy Cooper, they'd have to flip North Carolina. They would have to flip Maine when their top recruits don't want to really go for that Senate seat up in Maine. It's like a big mess that the Democrats really have on their hands as things stand today in terms of the Senate. And then the presidency, 2028, if they are able to somehow get their act together and find a candidate, is there a non-zero chance they could win it? Yeah, but again, they're not favored given the way certain states are going. Now, the House we haven't really talked about, but the House very well could be perma-Republican, at least for the 2030s, starting in 2030. Now, it is true, 2026, we're going to cover this because they have a problem in 2026. It's not as bad of a problem. They can overcome it. But if you want to talk about the consensus map, Republicans have 208 seats that are favored in their column. Democrats only have 205. And this is a map that is favorable, comparatively speaking, for the Democrats compared to some of these other forecasts that we see. In fact, Sabato's crystal ball, Larry Sabato, he's, gone off the cliff to the left recently. Democrats have a very tiny advantage in this map right here. But again, it's still like you have 19 seats that are toss-ups. Even if you want to say that this is the consensus map, if Republicans go out there and win just 11 of those 19, which is very possible to do, then they are going to go out there and hold the House, if not expand their majority, depending on how many that they get. And then the Cook Political Report, which is also left-leaning, this is huge. The Democrats are favored out of the gate at 205, Republicans at 212, which means that Republicans need to just win 1/3 out of those 18 House seats for them to go out there and hold the House next fall. It's very doable, in my opinion. And I can show you on this map here, because if they do that, then come 2028, it's very unlikely that they would lose the House in 2028. And then 2030 and beyond, it gets even easier. So I'll show you guys this. Just this fall, in and of itself, is it possible? Well, first of all, let's be clear. I will give the Democrats Wisconsin's third. I don't think Van Orden in his district should be lean Republican, especially because they'll likely redraw the map. I think Steele could very well hold on to his House seat, though, and I think that Republicans in Iowa's first. I think you could make the case they'd be favored there, as I think Marionette Miller Meeks is going to be primaried out, actually. And then you get to Arizona. Both of these seats should probably stay in the Republican column. And then you look at the map now, and then it's 214 to 206 already. Then there's redistricting in the state of Ohio. I think you can make the case they gain both of those seats, if not just one of them. Let's just say they get one, they're at 215. And then you look at some of these other, toss-up races. They have plenty of them. It is true they're defending quite a few of these, but it's like Don Bacon, he always ends up outperforming the top of the ticket in the state of Nebraska. They've tried to get him. He always manages to find some way to wrestle his way to victory. Could he very well go out there and win that district? I think the answer is he very well could. You could make the case. And then, either one of McKenzie or Perry very well could end up winning in their respective race. I think that you could probably make the case for McKenzie and Perry both winning if Stacey Garrity goes for governor, which she is expected to do. And on top of that, Susan Wild is not running for the 7th district, and Scott Perry's already beat his, same opponent, 2-3 times in a row. Is she really going to go for it again? I'm not entirely sure that is going to be the case, but either way, we had a really bad midterm year for Republicans in Pennsylvania in 2022, and they still walked away with that seat. I know it's moving away from the Republicans, and that's true, but still stronger top of the ticket can do a lot. And then you could talk about Maine and Maine's 2nd district or whatever, because Jared Golden might run for governor. That might open up that seat. You're already talking about 219 seats with a few toss-ups. I do think that Democrats might hold on to New Mexico 2nd. North Carolina's 1st, I think, is potentially a sleeper flip for the Republicans, though. But regardless, let's just assume that the House is just razor thin. It's on a knife's edge. We could, I guess you would say, look at the consensus. We could look at one of these, and we could just fill out the map. Let's say, Republicans, they end up breaking pretty much even, and they win a lot of those districts. Not all of them, but they end up winning a lot of them. You could make the case that could be true, and then the Democrats would end up taking, several of these other seats. In fact, I think that you could make the case that Republicans would have a little bit more than a narrow advantage if they're doing well in some of these. But regardless, let's just fill out the map here. Ignore the leans, by the way. But regardless, let's just assume that it's going to be a close. It's going to be a close house. I think Gabe Evans could very well hold on as well in that district. But regardless, let's make sure that we have filled out every single one of these districts. And it's possible a couple of those seats in California could flip. There's top of the ticket effects. And even though it's a midterm year with a Republican president in the White House, a lot of people are angry at Democrat leadership in New York and California, and those states matter quite a bit when it comes to the House. So let's just assume it's something like, okay, we forgot Van Orden's seat. There we go, 218 to 217, roughly around that ballpark. Even if the Democrats have a 10 or 15 seat advantage, which that would be pushing it. That's like a realistic wave for them come 2026, just because of how the map is set up. But let's talk about the 2030s. Okay, Texas is going to get 4 seats. Florida is going to get 4 seats. You're talking about several seats that are going to be added, and they're going to go Republican. That doesn't even talk about the fact that, the 34th and the 28th, due to trends, those seats are probably, you could make the case, gone for the Democrats, but that's 2 already that they would gain, and you could just fill out 2 random House seats. Again, this is not a prediction map or anything of the specific districts, but you're talking about where they're exactly getting seats and how they're drawing them. Now, Florida's going to get 4 as well. Now, maybe you say that one of those ends up being a Democrat seat. It's like a net gain of 2. Okay, already, that's still a lot of seats, and now Republicans have expanded their majority from 1 seat. Based off of that alone, now it's like 13 seats, somewhere in that ballpark. That's absolutely huge. And then you talk about Arizona, they're gaining a seat. That seat probably ends up being a Republican seat on net. And then you talk about Utah gaining a seat. We could just fill out one of them in Nevada, which again, Nevada trends might cause a couple of those seats to flip by the end of the decade anyways. And then you have the state of Idaho. They're getting one, which you could just like fill out a seat in Washington, a random seat there. Maybe we'll fill out the seat in the 3rd district because it would be a little bit more likely to be Republican, but that's besides the point. It's kind of missing the point regardless. But you look at that and it's like, okay, well, now Democrats, they're the ones that are going to be losing these seats in certain places. So already 227 That's like the baseline. So the baseline moves in the Republicans' direction by around 10 seats out of the gate. That's absolutely insane. Now, technically, it's true that, I'm not going to fill out like a red seat in Rhode Island to cancel it out, because one of those seats is going to go to a different state, and that we know. But it's like you see where the population is kind of moving. California, the margin narrows there. It's going to expand in Texas, in the Texas House. So regardless, that's like 10 House seats that the Democrats are going to be losing. And in the blue states, they're almost certainly going to be Democrat seats that are drawn out in most, if not all cases. Some of them might be red seats, which is kind of why we have that, I guess you would say, factor here factored in, which is why they're not gaining like 11 on net. It's like 9 or 10 on net, but still, that is absolutely huge. And then, when it comes down to trends in certain places, you might talk about certain places flipping. Now, it is true, on the other hand, places like Pennsylvania's 10th might be bluer. There's ways that they could do the map in certain places. Wisconsin, they might gain a seat or whatever. But regardless, the bottom line is that the baseline of the House is going to be much, much better for the Republicans. 10 seats better, roughly around there. In fact, to the point where, you have polarized redistricting, but even in a massive wave for the Democrats, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to win, to the point where if Republicans win in 2028, they're very well going to have a trifecta. And it's possible you get a Dem House in 28, but starting in 2030 until 2040 and possibly beyond, depending on where people are moving, depending on the next map, Republicans could have a trifecta for an entire decade. And they're going to have a cushion of a majority. This is not like a 3-seat majority. And they got to play their cards right, too. I mean, we've seen them drop the ball many times before. But in terms of the map, it is much, much easier. That part cannot be denied for Republicans to hold the House for the entire 2030s. Maybe you get a narrow Democrat majority for a little while, but that'd be about it. Meanwhile, in terms of the Senate, the Republicans are almost certainly going to hold it from 2030 until, the end of that decade. And people might say, well, the pendulum always switches. They'll find a way. And it's true that a realignment could take place and cause the Democrats to end up winning a presidential election, winning some states that they've never won before. I mean, this happens in politics. It's happened throughout history, but that would be a massively different Democratic Party than the party that they have today. So it's like either way you look at it, this is a win for the Overton window. This is a win for us. For sure, the Senate in the 2030s, it's very likely going to be in the Republican column. The House map is very likely in the Republican column. The presidency is as well. And you're talking about not a red wave, but a red renaissance on the horizon, which is absolutely huge if it's able to happen, which is why these midterms are important, because if you hold the House, that's the mandate moving forward. Donald Trump has 2 more years of a trifecta to enact his agenda moving forward. And then you possibly have an expanded Senate majority. You're talking about, filling up these judgeships with these conservative judges. That all that stuff helps for sure. That way you don't have certain judges that are going to be blocking Trump's agenda, just tying it up in courts, even though he wins the case anyways at the end of the day. It's like ridiculous what we see a lot of these judges doing. They're just activists. They're tying up Trump's agenda. They don't actually care about the rule of law or the Constitution or whatever, but that's besides the point. The main point is Republicans have a massive opportunity that is going to begin in the 2030s, but also, it already began in the Senate. And next fall is going to be crucial, and it could determine if the Republicans are going to hold these chambers for that elongated period of time, which we've seen throughout history, by the way. The Democrats had the House for 40-some, 50-some years back in the 20th century. They held the Senate for 30. This is not unheard of. It's just the way things are going. And the pendulum this time, in this day and age, it's swinging in the Republicans' direction. So we'll see what happens, guys. But anyways, make sure you guys like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.